Good morning, everybody. I'm Micheline from Americana Longarm Quilting. We do custom quilting and long arming, and you can find a link to our website in the description below. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and please excuse my raspy voice. I'm getting over a cold. I bought some fat quarter bundles from Annie's Cloth months ago. With the intention of making a cute little winter quilt, because it's got snowflakes and it's a really cute bundle. Some snowflakes. We've got just a nice neutral there. We've got more snowflakes here. Got some gnomes, which are always cute. More gnomes. And then some little gnomes in some coffee mugs that say hot cocoa, warm and cozy, hello winter. Very cute line of fabric. Very inexpensive. It is flannel. I've never worked with flannel before, so that should be interesting. But when I got ready to do something, I thought, well, you know, I want the back to be flannel too. I don't want it quilting cotton on the back and flannel on the front. So I realized, as much as I was trying to come up with a pattern that would use up the three fat quarters, I didn't have enough fabric. So I went back on the website and I started looking at what I could add to it. Did I just want to buy more fat quarters, or was there something else? And I found these two pieces. One is obviously a little panel, and this is about 22.5 inches to the outside of the white here, by a little bit more than 39. And the other one was this border fabric. So I bought two of these border panels, if you will. They come in 1 yard increments. So I've got a good amount of fabric there to work with. I've got this panel for the front. And I bought another fat quarter. And all of that came up too, because one of the reasons I go on Annie's is it's pretty inexpensive. All of that, 2 yards of this, and 4 sets of 6 fat quarters came to $72.64, and that was with shipping. It's not too bad, huh? So what we're going to do different today? What we're going to do different today is not so much sewing, because that's going to be kind of the easy part of this, although there will be a little bit of sewing. But I'm going to kind of take you through my process of how I decide what am I going to make these fabrics do for me. And I initially had planned to do a star or a pinwheel or something like that. Hi, boys. I got the full troop here today. Sarge, Ranger, and Bullet. Anyway, I'd initially planned to do a star or a pinwheel, or maybe even something like a courthouse steps. But there were 2 reasons I didn't. Number one, I wasn't going to be able to get the most out of these fat quarters. There was going to be some waste. And, I couldn't afford to have any waste because I was really tight on fabric. And number 2, I didn't know how the flannel was going to behave. Are the seams going to be bulky? Certainly don't want to try a pinwheel if the seams are going to be bulky. Things like that. So I'm going to take you through my process and show you how I decide on what to do and get to working on it. So what did I decide to do? Did I decide to do a pinwheel, that courthouse step, maybe a star? I think stars are probably my absolute favorite kind of quilting block. I'm not going to do any of those in this particular instance. Excuse me. I decided to go with something a little bit simpler, because it is that flannel, and I don't know how these seams are gonna work out. Plus, you know, this is a little bit busy, and this is kind of, I don't want to take away from the panel, right? So I decided to do a simple brick layout. Let's see if you're going to be able to see this. Whoops, let me just throw it. So I've got the panel in the middle, and then I've just got rectangles everywhere, and they're laid out in a brick pattern. Okay, so that was my decision on what I wanted to do. That was the best use of fabric. I could get the most cuts out of my fat quarters, and I did all the math, which isn't always easy for me. I'm a little bit dyslexic and I'm always transposing numbers. So when I do a pattern, I redo it and redo it and redo it and then redo it again just to make sure all my numbers are correct. But anyway, that is what I came up with. Now I need to figure out how big do I want to make my bricks, right? So this is the neat thing about panels. They're so smart when they make these. They've got you a little border here in cream in this instance that you can either use or you can cut off, depending on how much fabric you need. Then they've got a little bit of extra, in this case, this light tan color that again, you can either use or you can cut it off. It doesn't matter. So I'm not going to cut this until much further along in the process. But what I am going to do is decide how many rows I can have and how many wide, how many bricks wide I can go. So I started with how many rows will this be, right? And I want this quilt to be as big as I can so you can really snuggle up underneath of it. So this from the top of the cream to the bottom of the cream, about 39 1/8, a little bit more, but I've got a lot more to work with, right? I've got a good 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 up here, and at least 2 1/4 inches down there. So I've got plenty of room to work with. So from there, I divided that, and I ended up coming up with a finished block width or height from top to bottom of 5 3/4. That means I would need to cut them at 6 1/4, right? So I can get, I think I said 7. Yeah. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. So I can get 7 of those down along here. All right. And then I went to the top. Well, this needs to be definitely wider than the finished 5 3/4 because we want a rectangle. And I have figured that I can get, using some of this tan, both on the top and the bottom, I can get a 7 3/4 finished width of a brick. So all my bricks are going to be 5 3/4 by 7 3/4 finished. That means I need to cut them all at 6 1/4 by 8 1/4. Okay, so I did that with one of my sets of fat quarters already, and so this is going to be able to just go along here like this. Okay, all the way down, and I had to look at, all right, how much do I have left over, right? And come to find out, I had enough to do 3 rows across the top and 3 rows across the bottom. So the amount of blocks I needed was 8 by 13, and then the amount of blocks, which came to 104, I believe that's how much it came to. And the panel itself is going to displace 21 blocks. So all in all, I needed, oh my goodness, did I lose that figure? All in all, I needed 83 blocks. Well, I didn't get quite 83 out of this, but if I cut some of this up, I'll need about a half a yard. And if I cut some of this up, I've got it. And I think that'll be cute to work into the front. That'll be a really cute way to use that. All right. That is how I figured out how to do the front of the quilt. That was my process. Now let's move on to talking about the back of the quilt and how I came up with those figures. The front of my quilt is going to finish, and I'm going to say approximately 62 by 75 inches. And I say approximately because this is going to be a brick pattern. So we're going to cut one of those bricks in half and put it on the ends of every other row to get that brick pattern. So I might have to cut it, even it up a little bit. Who knows? So it's going to be approximately 62 by 75. So that means the back has to be, and I think I said it was 62 by 75. I meant 62 by 74. That means I need 4 inches on each side and 4 inches on the top and the bottom to be able to put it on mount it on Eleanor back there and long arm it. That means my back needs to be 70 by 82. So that means I will need first, what I had decided to do, instead of making the bricks the same size as the front, to utilize, because when I did the front, I had about a 2 1/4 inch strip that was waste. All right. So to get away from having any waste and use the largest size I could, I just simply folded that in half and folded that in half and said, okay, what's the largest size brick I can get out of that? And that ended up being 7.5 by 9.5 finished. So 8 by 10. Okay. So I can get, out of the 2 fat quarter bundles that I designated for the back, I can get 48 bricks. In total, I need 88 bricks because, again, I need it to be 70 inches wide by 82 inches long. So I needed another 40 bricks. Well, remember I told you I had another one of these. And although I was using about half of one of these for the front, that left me 1.5 yards of this border fabric that I could use on the back. So that will give me my additional 40 bricks that I need. And that's what I had planned to do. And then I got to thinking, maybe I don't even want to cut the fat quarters up. Maybe I want to leave them in large pieces. So when we get to the back, we'll have to think about that and have to lay it out and see, will that be the size that I need? And will an additional 6 fat quarters out of this be enough? You might not even be able to do, because this has to be oriented a certain way. This is the process of figuring out what to do with your fabric. You have to really think things through. So we're going to table the back for just a minute, and we're going to move on with working on the front. And when we get the front all done, then we'll go back to the back and see what is the most the best way to utilize our fabric. Okay. Couple more cuts and I'll have this all laid out. So obviously with a brick pattern, you have to cut some of them in half, which is what I'm doing now. And I'm just folding it in half as neatly and precisely as I can. And then I am sticking my scissors in there. See, I'll come back over here just a bit so you can see a little bit better. Getting that as nice and straight as I possibly can. I'm going to hold on to it with my fingers like so. Stick my scissors in there and putting some pressure with my scissors to hold that straight. I just cut that in half. Now he goes back over there, and I'll take this stack and go to the other side and see if I can't figure out where they all go. All right. So what I'm doing is, now I see the blue snowflake over there, so I'm going to put his partner over here, like that. Let's see, this gets a snowflake, this gets a gnome. Oh, I can see I'm going to have to switch something around there. How about I do that? There we go. Thought I had figured all that out. I'm still a little bit messed up right there, but that's okay. I will get that figured as soon as I get all these laid out. That's a gnome and that's a that. So I have to figure out a way to get this guy someplace else. Don't want a snowflake. Let's see here. Or I could put him back there and still have to find a place for him. So either way, I've got to find something other than one of these two gnomes to go in here. How about we do... I don't know how that helped me. All right, well, I'm going to get that figured out. But you don't need to see me do all that. What I'm going to do next is pin all of these together so I don't lose their placement, and I'm going to sew this row together. I'm going to sew this row together, and I'm going to sew this row together, and I will sew those three together. I'm going to do the same for the 3 rows on the bottom, and then I'm going to sew this row together, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then I'm going to piece all 7 of these rows together. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So then I'll have 4 big pieces. I'll have my top, my bottom, my side, and my side. At that point, I'll know how long to cut my panel because I'll want it to match this. So I have to do this before I can cut the length of my panel. And when I get the length cut, I'm going to need to carefully measure how wide is the top and bottom and where is the center of that. And then I'll know how wide to cut the panel, and then I'll be able to attach these 2 sides to the panel, and then the bottoms and the top will be done. Aren't these colors fabulous? I just love the way they all play so beautifully together. I'm really going to be happy with this, and I think it'll be a nice size quilt. All right, let me find another home for one of those gnomes and get to pinning this together. Then I'll meet you at the machine. As I'm going along here showing you that how I'm sewing these bricks together, I wanted to show you something. Let me see if I can get it up here to where you can see it. Yeah, I think you can see that right there. Right there. You see how this full brick ends up being wider than this narrow or the smaller brick, and the same over here. This full brick is longer than the half a brick, which makes perfect sense. And that's okay. That's why I said it was going to be approximately 62 by 74 3/4, I think. That way I've got the ability to trim this down and it'll come out just right. And if you're worried that these 2 narrower sides that are going to be on the sewn on either side of the panel is going to throw off the brick layout for the top and the bottom, it's not, because I can make that panel any width I need to. Just remember that. Okay? All right, I'm going to continue sewing. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a break from our video that we've been filming here and tell you I just took a break and I watched a little bit of YouTube, and I watched Carol Thielen, Thelen, I hope I'm not massacring her name, I just watched her latest video. I will leave a link to it in the description below so you can go watch it. Tell her I sent you in her comment section. This is brilliant. I was thinking earlier today, I really have to come up with a better system than pinning with a straight pin a post-it note with my row number. And she has done that in that video. It's brilliant. And what she does is she took something else, but then she used something else, but she also suggested using one of these, let me do it this way, one of these little embroidery floss holders. And I knew I had a bunch of these, so this is what I'm using. Take one of those, write the number on it, write your row number, put it on a pin, and then stack it up, your entire row, stack it up, excuse me, put the pin through the entire row, and you will know exactly how you are supposed to sew them together, because you'll just unpin the entire row, keep that first one pinned, bring it over here, take this next one, sew it there. Then the next one, sew it there. So really, really super brilliant. Go to her video, watch that one. It's a nice short little video, and it's a great idea. So thank you, Carol. And now back to our regularly scheduled video. All right, so I've got my 4 sides, my top, my bottom, and my 2 sides sewn up into their brick pattern. I have trimmed the edges of the 2 sides so that they're even again. And now I'm ready to start trimming my center panel, okay? Now, to trim it to height was very easy, the same height as these. So I measured them both. I decided it needed to be 41 and an 8. That gave me an inch past the cream borders. So I went ahead and cut that. Now let's talk about how I got the width. And I have not cut the width yet because I wanted to go through it with you and talk to you about it. First thing I did, and I did this when I was connecting all my rows, I found the center of one of my finished sized bricks. This one, you don't want to find the center of it because it still has a 1/4 of an inch over here. So I found that center point, and I'm going to bring it up here and put it on the seam here that it's going to coordinate with, okay? I flatten that out nice and neat, and I put a pin right here where this one ended. Now, my seam is going to be a 1/4 of an inch past that, or prior to it rather. So this one needs to be cut yet another 1/4 inch to the left and to the right. So I measured away from those pins a 1/2 inch, and that came to 24 inches. So then I put my ruler here, and 24 inches is about 3/4 of an inch past that cream colored little border. So my next step is to go and cut this down just a smidgen, and then I can put my 2 side pieces on it, and then I'll be able to put my top and bottom on it. All right, so let me go cut that down. I wanted to take a second and bring you a little bit closer in so you could see what I was talking about with these pins. I've got this attached now, and here's that pin I was talking to you about that I put in the center of this brick. And I want that pin to line up perfectly with this seam right here, okay? And it does. And remember, I told you that this pin was the end of this material, and this pin needed to be at the end of this material, and the seam needs to be right in the center of the two, and it is. So now I just need to put the top and the bottom together, and I'll show you when it's all put together. We'll take that final measurement so we know how big to make the back, and that'll be the next thing we need to do. I got the top all finished. It's sitting back there over the top of Eleanor, waiting for us to get the back done. And it ended up being 62 inches wide by 75 inches long. So it was actually a 75 or 76. 76 inches long. And that's because I was kind of doing everything approximate, so I didn't know exactly how big I was going to make that panel in the center, and I ended up making it a little bit bigger than I had calculated. So when I went to do my calculations for the back, I no longer had enough fabric to cut all these fat quarters up into 4 pieces. Nor did I have enough of this fabric, even with the 1.5 yards I had, to create enough blocks to make it the size that I needed it. So I thought, okay, well, what can I do? So, as you can see, I'm using this yard piece of border fabric as a panel, and I was able to put all of the other pieces around it. Now, this panel ended up being almost 43 inches. So these 2 fat quarters are not quite long enough sewn together to cover this distance. But I had this extra little piece left over. And what I think I'm going to do, because I only need a couple of inches, maybe not even that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that piece out right there, and I'm going to put it in between these 2. And then that will make them long enough to sew onto this. And that's exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this section, that section, sew them together to this, and then I'll sew the 4 of those together, and sew it on. So first things first, I have to go cut all the salvages off, square everything up, or rectangle everything up. Crack me up. And get that done. That way Eleanor can get to work. I got the back all finished. I did have to put spacers at the top and the bottom, as well as the sides to make it the size that I needed. Again, when you're sending your quilt to a Longarm, remember you have to have it 4 inches wider all the way around. So 8 inches wider, 8 inches longer. That way we can mount it on the Longarm machine. I've got my Quilter's Dream 80/20 batting ready to go. I have picked a lovely little snowflake pattern. I'm going to use kind of a bright blue. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get it and show it to you. I'm going to use this bright blue, not really a bright blue. Let me get it a little bit closer so you can see. It's just going to look really nice on there. That'll be pretty. So that's what I'm going to use. And like I said, it's going to have a little snowflake pattern. And now I'm going to load it onto Eleanor and get her started. I wanted to take a minute and show you this adorable quilting pattern. It's got these cute swirly meanders going all throughout it, and then it's got snowflakes thrown all about it. I just love it. I think that matches this just so perfectly. Now, as you know, I have a Longarm quilting business, and I literally have thousands of patterns. If you don't see a pattern that you like on our website, we couldn't put all thousands of patterns that I have on that website. But so if you don't see a pattern that you like, reach out to me. I know I can find you exactly the pattern that you're interested in, okay? Now let me step back and show you the rest of this quilt. All right, this is just one of my favorite times of these videos, is to show you the final product. I love this line of fabric. I think it's really fun. He's pushing me over. That's the Great Dane lean for you. The fabric line is adorable. This one finished 62 by 76. You're kind of pushy today, and which is a generous size throw. Now I used a brick pattern layout on this, which is really easy and fun to do. It was a great use of the fabric. And it's really fun too because it makes it look like the gnomes, the little snow gnomes, are in an igloo. Really cute. I love it. I hope you like it too. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share. Do all the things that make that algorithm sing. And until next time, stay quilting. Bye, y'all.